The outbreak of the revolution. Louis XVI had to increase taxes for reasons you have learnt in the previous section. How do you think he could have gone about doing this? In France of the old regime, the monarch did not have the power to impose taxes according to his will alone. What is meant by monarch? Monarch is the head of the state. So now this head of the state, he had no power to ask for taxes, to levy taxes according to his will alone. Rather, he had to call a meeting of the States General, which would then pass his proposals for new taxes. So before levying taxes, before imposing taxes, the monarch had to call for a meeting with the States General. Now, who were the States General? The States General was a political body. It was a group of people to which the three states sent their representatives. Means the three states, the nobility, the clergy, and the third estate. All these three sent their leaders and their representatives to the States General. And the monarch had to have a meeting with these States General before imposing taxes. The States General was a political body to which the three states sent their representatives. However, the monarch alone could decide when to call a meeting of this body. The last time it was done was in 1614. On 5 May 1789, Louis XVI called together an assembly of the States General to pass proposals for new taxes. A resplendent hall in Versailles was prepared to host the delegates. What was resplendent hall? It was an attractive, impressive and colorful hall, and in that hall the meeting was to be conducted. The first and second states sent 300 representatives each, means total 600, who were seated in rows facing each other on two sides, while the 600 members of the third estate had to stand at the back. You see, first and second estates, they were sitting, but the third estate, they were not allowed to sit, they were standing at the back. The third estate was represented by its more prosperous and educated members. Peasants, artisans and women were denied entry to the assembly. Who were not there in the assembly? Peasants, artisans and women were denied, were refused. They were not allowed to enter the assembly. Then who was there? Only the prosperous and educated members. However, their grievances and demands were listed in some 40,000 letters which the representatives had brought with them. See, the number of letters was 40,000, and what was written in those letters? Grievances, feeling of having been treated unfairly, the complaints and demands. Grievances means complaints. Whose complaints? The complaints of the third estate, those who had to pay taxes and suffer poverty. So now, voting in the States General in the past had been conducted according to the principle that each state had one vote. This time too, Louis XVI was determined to continue the same practice. Each state had one vote. But members of the third estate demanded that voting now be conducted by the assembly as a whole, where each member would have one vote. This was one of the democratic principles put forward by philosophers like Rousseau in his book, The Social Contract. Now see, members of the third estate, now they were demanding. What were they demanding for? They wanted voting now be conducted by the assembly as a whole, where each member would have one vote. Now, this idea of democratic principle was taken from the book, The Social Contract. When the king rejected this proposal, members of the third estate walked out of the assembly in protest. Now, naturally, who rejected this proposal of voting? The king. And as soon as he rejected, the members of the third estate walked out of the assembly. They did not like this. The representatives of the third estate viewed themselves as spokesmen for the whole French nation. See how they have developed now. They started speaking for the whole French nation as a whole. On 20 June, they assembled in the hall of an indoor tennis court in the grounds of Versailles. They declared themselves a national assembly and swore not to disperse till they had drafted a constitution for France that would limit the powers of the monarch. They wanted to limit, they want to do lower, they wanted to bring down the powers of the monarch. Now, the representatives, they started speaking and they declared themselves a National Assembly. They called themselves a group, and the group was given the name National Assembly. Okay, and they swore is they promised sincerely not to disperse, not to separate from each other till they had drafted. They wanted to make a constitution. Why? What constitution? They wanted to make a set of rules for France. That would, why they wanted to make? To limit, to bring down the powers of the monarch. They were led by two leaders. And what were the names? Mirabeau and Abbe Sieyès. Mirabeau was born in a noble family but was convinced of the need to do away with a society of feudal privilege. See, he was born in a noble family but he was working for the rights for the third estate. He brought out a journal and delivered powerful speeches to the crowds assembled at Versailles. What work he did? Mirabeau, he brought out a journal. He did written work against the monarch, the privileges, and he also delivered powerful speeches to the crowds assembled at Versailles. Now, the other leader, what did he do? Abbe Sieyès, originally a priest, wrote an influential pamphlet called What is the Third Estate? Now, these are the work done by these two leaders while the National Assembly was busy at Versailles drafting a constitution. The rest of France seethed with turmoil. What is seethed with turmoil? Seethed is to feel anger. The whole France was angry. It was angry with turmoil. What is turmoil? It is a state of confusion. See, normal people were confused with anger. A severe winter had meant a bad harvest. Now again the condition was severe winter. Because of winter, there was a bad harvest. The crops were not so productive. The price of bread rose. The prices of bread went high. Often bakers exploited the situation. Means bakers exploited the situation. They were selling the bread and they rose the prices of the bread and hoarded supplies. Hoarded means they kept the bread in stock but they did not give to keep with themselves. After spending hours in long queues at the bakery, crowds of angry women stormed into the shops. See, women had to wait for the bread but they did not get. They had to sometimes go back empty-handed. At the same time, the king ordered troops to move into Paris on 14 July. The agitated crowd stormed and destroyed the Bastille. So now this was the condition. In the countryside, rumors spread from village to village that the lords of the manor had hired bands of brigands who were on their way to destroy the ripe crops. Now, what rumors spread from village to village? That the lords of the manor is a large house, a large building around which there used to be land, and it was owned by the lords of the manor. Manor is a large house. Now here, what did the rumors spread? That the lords of the manor had hired bands of brigands who were on their way to destroy the ripe crops. Brigands are the robbers. Groups of robbers are going to come and destroy the ripe crop. Caught in a frenzy of fear, peasants in several districts seized hoes and pitchforks and attacked chateau. So now, caught in a frenzy of fear. Now, who were afraid? Who were now worried? The peasants. Now the peasants were afraid. They got the rumors, and now they were frenzy of fear. Means the fear was not able to get into control, and they seized. They took what? What did they take? The hoes and the pitchforks are the tools used in the farm. They took the tools and they attacked the chateau. The meaning of chateau is given here. Chateau is a castle or stately residence belonging to a king or a nobleman. Now, because they were worried that their crops will be disturbed, will be destroyed, they started to attack the chateau. They looted, hoarded grain and burned down documents containing records of manorial dues. Now they were so angry, they were so full of fear that they looted the hoarded grains. The hoarded grains means the grains that were stored, and burnt down documents. They started burning documents. Which documents? That contained records of manorial dues. What are records of manorial dues? Something was recorded. What was recorded? The manorial dues, the payments. Manor means the houses, a large house, a large building, and in that building, around the building, there were lands. And so the dues, the payments regarding the lands, and all the dues and payments and whatever pending, all was recorded, and the recorded documents, they were burnt down by these peasants who went to the chateau with hoes and pitchforks. A large number of nobles fled from their homes, many of them migrating to neighboring countries. As a result, large number of nobles who enjoyed the special rights, the privileges, they fled, they flew away, they ran from their homes. Many of them also migrated to the neighboring countries. They literally shifted to the neighboring countries. Faced with the power of his revolting subjects, faced with the power, who was getting the power? The revolting subjects. Subjects means the people. The people were getting power, and they were revolting. They were showing discontent. Now, who understood this? Louis XVI. Finally, he accorded recognition, means he gave recognition to National Assembly, means accepted that there is a National Assembly and he was ready to deal with it and accepted the principle that his powers would from now on be checked by a constitution, that he will follow the rules in the constitution. He was ready to, he gave recognition to the National Assembly, and he was ready to be checked that whether his whatever power he is using, that power will be checked by the constitution. On the night of 4th August 1789, the assembly passed a decree abolishing the feudal system of obligations and taxes. What happened on the night of 4 August 1789? The assembly that was formed by the third estate, it passed a decree. What is decree? An official order that has the force of law. The assembly was successful in passing. What did it pass? A decree. What is a decree? A decree is an official order that has the force of a law. It was an order. What was the order? It was to abolish. Abolish is to stop the feudal system of obligations and taxes. Whatever compulsory tax payment was there, it was to be stopped. And to stop this, what was passed? A decree. A decree is an official order. Members of the clergy too were forced to give up their privileges. Members of clergy was not allowed to enjoy the special rights. Tithes were abolished and lands owned by the church were confiscated. How many changes were brought because of the National Assembly? Confiscated is taken with power. The tithes were abolished. The tithes were stopped. The tithes were stopped. And what was abolished? What was abolished? The lands owned by the church were confiscated. They were confiscated means they were taken with power. The church was not allowed to own lands. As a result, the government acquired assets worth at least 2 billion livres. France becomes a constitutional monarchy. Now, monarch is nothing but a head of the state. Now, in place of the head of the state, now constitutional monarchy was developed. France becomes a constitutional monarchy. Instead of one single head, now there was constitutional monarchy. Head in the form of constitution. Means now the rules written in the constitution were to be followed. No head can impose taxes or do whatever he or she wants to do. The National Assembly completed the draft of the constitution in 1791. Its main object was to limit the powers of the monarch. These powers, instead of being concentrated in the hands of one person, were now separated and assigned to different institutions, the legislature, executive and judiciary. Now, the powers were not in the hands of one person. They were distributed. They were separated and assigned and given to different institutions, the legislature, executive and the judiciary. These terms we have often come across in civics also. Legislature is the branch of the government, the institution that makes laws. Executive sees that they are followed, and judiciary maintains law and order. This made France a constitutional monarchy. Figure 7 explains how the new political system worked. The Constitution of 1791 vested the power to make laws in the National Assembly. which was indirectly elected. Vested is to give the power. Now what happened? The Constitution of 1791 gave the power to make laws in the National Assembly, which was indirectly elected. Now see, what power was given to make the laws? The power to make the laws was given in the National Assembly. That is, citizens voted for a group of electors who in turn chose the assembly. Not all the citizens, however, had the right to vote. Only men about 25 years of age who paid taxes equal to at least 3 days of a laborer's wage were given the status of active citizens, that is, they were entitled to vote. Now here is something we need to understand. Not all citizens, however, had the right to vote. Then who had the right to vote? Only men above 25 years. Only men about 25 years of age, and that too who paid taxes. Taxes equal to at least 3 days of a laborer's wage. Means whatever he earned for 3 days, he had to give as taxes, he had to pay as taxes, and then they were given the status of active citizens. Then only they were called active citizens. That is, they were entitled to vote. They were eligible to vote only if they are about 25 years and they pay taxes, and taxes were equal to at least 3 days of wage. The remaining men and all women were classed as passive citizens. To qualify as an elector and then as a member of the assembly, a man had to belong to the highest bracket of taxpayers. The remaining men and all women, they were classed as passive citizens. The people who did not take part in voting, the people who did not pay taxes equal to 3 days wages, they were called passive citizens. To qualify as an elector and then as a member of the assembly, a man had to belong to the highest bracket of taxpayers. A man who pays taxes was only able to qualify to become an elector and then as a member of the assembly. The Constitution began with a declaration of the rights of man and citizen. Rights such as the right to life, freedom of speech, freedom of opinion, equality before law were established as natural and inalienable rights. That is, they belong to each human being by birth and could not be taken away. It was the duty of the state to protect each citizen's natural rights. Now, the Constitution began with a declaration of the rights of man and citizens. A proper, you can see on the right hand side, a declaration, set of rules was drafted in the Constitution, and it had all the rights such as right to life, right to freedom of speech, freedom of opinion, equality before law, and they were established as natural and inalienable rights. Inalienable rights means the rights, here the meaning is given, they belong to each human being by birth. Means as soon as a human being, a baby was born, these rights were given to it and could not be taken away. It was the duty of the state to protect each citizen's natural rights. It was the duty of the government to protect each citizen's natural rights.